I grew up in Eatontown, and I attended Monmouth Regional High School in Tinton Falls. And then I attended TCNJ, but I went there back when it was called Trenton State College. I graduated in 1994, and I majored in English education. And then I got hired that fall of 1994 right here at Brick Township High School, and this has been my first and only ever teaching job, very happy to say. When did I decide I wanted to be a teacher? I think deep down I always knew. I think back to when I was younger, my sister who's also a teacher now, when we were younger, we would play school in the basement, and we forced our younger brother to be our student. And so it's just kind of always been in my blood. My mother's a teacher, and it's funny because my sister and I kid around now. My brother's turned out rather well in life, and so we like to kid around and claim credit for who he's become. But all kidding aside. And then junior year in high school, I fell in love with American literature. And I realized that literature can be empowering, and I think it helped me grow into myself. And I found, a lot I loved in books, and I just want to kind of spread that magic with students. And I think that's what I love being about a teacher. I love showing students the power of literature and that how we can learn about ourselves and the world around us. I tell students I like to think of literature as a window and a mirror. You can see reflections of yourself, the kind of person you do or don't want to become, and you can also use it to understand more about the world around you. Courses I currently teach include English 1, I teach freshmen. I also teach the elective Mindful Immersion. It's a great course that helps students foster self-awareness and equip them with resilience strategies and stress coping techniques. And then I also teach the Harry Potter course. It's called Harry Potter, History and Literary Criticism, and I teach that alongside Mr. Pazmino. He teaches the history end of it. And it's a great way to look at the most magical book series of all time and why it's so iconic and why it's still beloved. And we can apply all the English and history skills to it. This spring I'll also be teaching sports and literature, and that's a course that students can take in lieu of English 3 or English 4. As far as extracurricular involvement, early on in my career I did some coaching. I was advisor of the National Honor Society. Currently I'm the advisor of the literary magazine called The Regaler, and I advise that alongside Mr. Doyle. And we like to think of ourselves as a platform by which students can share their creative works. Poetry, creative writing, artwork, cool photos. And it's a magazine that we publish at the end of the year. And I'm also on the Wall of Fame committee. I think the biggest challenge about being a teacher now is staying relevant. We have a lot of competition. And I think in general we are a consuming culture, not a consumer culture. We're also a consumer culture, but by consuming culture, youths nowadays are constantly scrolling their phones, and that's a lot for us to compete with, and they're constantly absorbing others' ideas. And as a teacher, I want to remind students that it's important to create, and I want them to know how to create. I want them to remember how to create. And I think it's also important for them to realize the importance of having independent thoughts and taking pride in them. I think the biggest reward about being a teacher are those daily wins. I know it sounds cliched, but it's true. I think it's a great moment when students realize they can do hard things, because our goal here as teachers is to make sure that they're empowered in life to be able to accomplish things. And I also think awareness is a superpower. It's an absolute superpower, being self-aware. That means students know what their strengths are, and they can lean into those strengths. And it means they also can identify their weaknesses so that they can grow them. And there's no right or wrong way to be as a person, but I think it's important for students to know whatever they are, to be proud of it, and to be able, again, to use those skill sets to their advantage. It's also very rewarding, I think, from a relationship angle, to know that as a teacher we're not just teaching a subject, but that we're teaching people. And I always love it, if I'm out at a store and I run into a past student, whether it's from last year or 30 years ago, and you see them and they're on their way in life accomplishing great things. And there's a really good feeling, because again, we're growing, I think, through connection. We're all helping each other grow. I'm going to sit here and say too, I've learned from my students as well. It's also interesting having taught so long, because at the beginning of my career, some of those students are now parents whose kids have sat in my classroom, or have children who are even the age of my children, and now I know them as parents and neighbors and townspeople. So it's a really cool thing here, I think, in Brick Township that we grow. There's a lot of people in Brick who go to Brick and then come back to Brick or stay in Brick. I wasn't born here and I didn't go to school here, but sometimes I feel that way because it's just a really special feeling in this town, very rewarding. I think it's hard to pinpoint a specific lesson that I love, but I can tell you some things that I love teaching. I love teaching Romeo and Juliet for several reasons. Besides being a great springboard for looking at the consequences of impulsive actions, right? Like that is like a screaming billboard for like, don't be impulsive, think through your actions. Studying Shakespeare also shows students that they can do tough things. At the beginning of the play, students are assuming, I'm not going to understand any of this, and we get them to see that they can. And it's not beach reading by any means, but you have to work through the language and there's a rigor to it, and it's really cool to see students arrive at the fact that, oh wow, I can understand tough things. In Mindful Immersion, I love our resilience unit because the overriding message is to students that everything I need is within me. We have the power to solve tough problems and to come up with solutions, and things might not always work out the way we want, but we can weather things and get through them. And with Harry Potter, at the end of this series, there are several big character transformations, and I want to avoid spoilers, so I don't want to talk about them specifically, but we love doing character studies of two key characters at the end of the series. And ultimately, the point of that course is for students to understand that we all have magic within us. You know, through looking at the historic parallels and the character arcs, they can really come into some pretty impactful realizations about themselves. Being chosen as Staff Member of the Month by the students of Brick Township High School is really meaningful. It's really cool. And ultimately, that's why we're all here at the end of the day, for the students. So to have them say that something they've done in my classroom is impactful to them, it's the best. You can't beat it.